right. With that being said, though, as we are nearing the end of the hour already, because time flies when you're having fun, right? Have been working through our depth chart here on the show. For those of you guys that maybe missed in the past, go check it out on YouTube on our past episodes, because we've been going position by position, sharing our top 3 players for each respective position. And we're actually nearing the end. We're going to build out our full depth chart of the best all-time Phillies lineup. We are only factoring in their time with the Phillies, so not their full career, just their time with the Phillies, which has drastically changed some things. And so that being said, today we're going, and it's fitting as we talk about the Phillies having the top bullpen in the league, that we're going with closers, because there's been some historic, iconic guys that have rocked the Phillies jersey that have been relievers in the past. So there have been a lot of honorable mentions, and I won't spoil who they are yet because that'll take away from our top 3. But there are a lot of honorable mentions that were close, but factoring in their years, championships, stats and things like that, they just missed the mark on meeting our top 3.
When you're the losingest franchise in the existence of sports in North America, guess what? Winning a title gets weighted pretty heavily. I'll just say that.
Okay,
and I think it's fair. The Phillies have been around forever and don't win the title very often. Closers, as we know in postseason baseball, or high leverage guys, and if you want to call it in modern baseball, they're very important come playoff time. So I think that speaks a lot for our top 3.
The one thing, too, that we have to kind of keep in mind is, like, up until probably the early to mid 80s, the closer role was not a definable role as it is today. You had guys at the back end of the bullpen that you would use.
They might go 3 innings.
The closer, but right, exactly. They might be getting 6 or 9 outs. The definable closer role really didn't start until like Dennis Eckersley kind of ran with that torch, and then it became a singular position for a singular inning for a singular purpose. And then, of course, you got guys like Mariano Rivera and Trevor Hoffman and Lee Smith, who just ran away with save counts. But like for a bulk of baseball, closer was not really a role. I mean, you figure 100 years of baseball and closer wasn't a thing. It's really only a 40-year window you're thinking about.
Yeah, exactly. Let us know your thoughts in the chat on who you think is going to make the top 3. Now, this number 3 guy is going to surprise you. It's none other than not Craig Kimbrell.
Don't do that. Don't do that to us.
I couldn't leave that for long, so I knew you were going to put the graphic up. Because our real number 3 guy is Brad Lynch, who played 4 years with the Phillies, had 214 appearances, a 3.11 record, a 3.73 ERA. He pitched for 193 innings. He had 100 saves, a 1.430 whip. It's Mr. 48 for 48 himself in save opportunities. 4th in Cy Young voting in 2008 and 48 for 48, including the postseason. That's probably partly the most important factor as to why Brad Lynch is in the top 3, because your role is to come in high leverage moments, clutch moments, game on the line, season on the line, and deliver. And Brad Lynch, and the iconic moment that we think back to in 2008, we all remember it. It lands you here because when you have a moment like that to literally bring a title to the city, you deserve to be in the number 3 spot. He went 2-0 with a 1.95 ERA and 41 saves in that regular season back in 2008, posting a 96 ERA and 7 saves in the postseason. He stepped up when it mattered most. Injuries aside, everything else aside, Brad Lynch, numero 3.
Yeah, that means number 3 for you non-Spanish speakers. I know that because I'm well-versed in many languages. Look, there's not many championships.
You can hardly speak English properly.
Literally.
There's not many titles in Philadelphia, and I fully believe there's no title in 2008 if it's not for Brad Lynch. He dealt with injuries those 3 years, and his career was a pretty great one, but it did roller coaster. Good year, bad year, good year, bad year. Unfortunately, 2009, Brad Lynch was very bad. A little bit of a rebound in 2010, 2011. We'd all like to forget about that year. The final 3 years here wasn't the best, but I think the one was so good that it catapults you into the top 3. And there's no more iconic image to me as a Phillies fan in my lifetime than Brad Lynch dropping to his knees at the mound and Chooch and Ryan Howard and everybody piling on top. So Brad Lynch he gave you a lot of heart palpitations that year, a lot of men on third, But all that matters at the end of the day, he went 48 for 48 and didn't cost you, and he was spectacular that year.
Yeah, there are a lot of great names that come to mind when you think of, all-time greats for Phillies. Ron Reed, Ryan Madsen, Turk Farrell, Jim Constanti, excuse me, butchered that. But listen, number 2 is none other than a guy that's joined us here on the show.
A friend of the program.
A friend of ours.
Sure, we'll call him that.
John, as he goes by, as he told us. Papelbon, that number 2 for his 4 years with the Phillies, 234 appearances. Not only does Papelbon give you great personality and stories, he also gives you a 14-11 record, a 2.31 ERA, 237 and 2/3 innings pitched, 1.23 for his saves, a 1.022 WHIP with 252 strikeouts, and the franchise leader in saves. I bet y'all didn't remember that key factor. That's a big nugget, along with a two-time All-Star. Pat being the franchise's all-time saves leader. That is like, I feel like for each guy, there was like one little factor that really put them over. Championships is a big one. But being an all-time saves leader, Papelbon was a man that really, really was fine stepping up to, adversity, tough situations. Criticism didn't matter. You always knew he was going to deliver. 123 saves in his time here. It's incredible, too.
Yeah, I mean, his ERA plus during those, 4 years or 3 years was a 167.
Yeah.
Like, he was filthy here with the Phillies. His whip was great. His ERA was great. He's a franchise leader. Look, is he a little rough around the edges? Yep. Certainly is. I think he himself even said, like, yeah, I know I'm not going to be invited back for much. But when we spoke with him, really enjoyed his time here, oddly enough. He was a really freaking good closer. He was just, he grabbed his crotch and he wasn't people's favorites. But if you're just looking at performance on the field, Jonathan Papelbon was great here.
Seth is saying in the chat, the crotch grab's greater than the World Series vintage Philly. And then Randy is mentioning to be the all-time save leader for only being here 4 years is wild. And it definitely shows the need that this team is very closer-starved. Tyler, you want to talk anything about our guy Pap?
So I think, I mean, the numbers are pretty substantial, and I think that, to a fact that I almost undervalued him. Like the running fact that is that he's the all-time saves leader, but the 2.31 ERA over the course of three and a half seasons is pretty significant. And I know a lot of people say, oh, those are kind of forgettable years as they were trending downward, right? Yes. And 11 was the last year that they had made the playoffs, and they were really, by the time they had traded him, they were really in a rebuild mode. But I think that, you can't not include the franchise's all-time save leader in a closer conversation. Yeah. Like in a 1 year sample size, I would take the year of Lynch, the year of Bedrosian, the year of the guy who's coming up at number 1. Like all of those guys have 1 year definable, like, career traits. Lynch is 48 for 48. Bedrosian won the Cy Young. 1980 was huge for our number 1 guy. But like in a full like 10-year sample size, Jonathan Papelbon was really freaking good here.
Yeah. I know you guys, who he is as a person may not be a fan favorite. Definitely has some stories. And
I know people listen. The comments are like,
a great closer.
He's a heel, he's a punk. Yeah. Can't take him over, over Lynch, blah blah blah. Like, and I get it. Like he's the character questions are real. I get it. I understand it.
The guy at number 1, I think, cancels out any character concerns.
Well, that's also why I feel like as a closer, there's got to be. It's like a goalie in soccer. Like there's certain roles and positions in sports that you have to have some level of almost insanity to be able to deal with the pressure that comes with that. Yeah. And you know what? You gotta believe our number 1 guy's not going to be a surprise to some. Tug McGraw sitting at number 1. Tug McGraw, who was with the Phillies for 10 years, 463 appearances, a 49-37 record, a 3.10 ERA, 722 innings pitched, 94 saves with a 1.198 WHIP and 491 strikeouts. 5th in Cy Young voting. 5 times he was for 5 times. In 1980, he had a sub-3 ERA. That 1980 championship have a
sorry,
one.
that graphic's backwards. He received 5th place votes in 1980. 5 times he had a sub 3
In
ERA.
1980, he had a
I was
one.
like, I didn't think that
that
makes
graphic
sense.
is backwards.
He
It
had a
should be, yeah.
1.46
I was gonna say-
ERA in 1980. He was
Yes.
filthy that year.
So Tug McGraw, yes, when you talk about that 1.46 ERA, 20 saves in 92 and 1/3 innings in 1980, also a year of a championship. Championships put you on the list. And yes, fit for the NL Cy Young Award in that time too. But Tug McGraw, #1 guy for overall top best. The combination of he was talented, he was a great personality, super lovable. I don't know if there's many bad things we can say about Tug McGraw.
Yeah, I think he had the "you gotta believe" thing with the Mets before he got here, but brought it with him, and it stuck. I mean, when you look at Baycare Complex, they have it on the wall down there. You gotta believe. I mean, to me, Lidge was the most iconic memory, but Tug jumping up on the mound and winning the title in '80 is probably #2. Funny how we really harp on championships here when they happen. But Tug was great. I didn't really get to see much of him pitch. I was a wee lad, but
me too.
you always hear the stories of Tug and what a personality and how great he was and how he was a big part of the culture with Hall of Famers all over that roster. That stuff matters, and he's absolutely beloved in Philadelphia Phillies lore. And the Tugger gets #1.